The following program, Norml Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, Norml.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of Norml Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of Norml. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents Norml Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, Norml's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes, and welcome. It is Monday, November 7th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us today. We have got a great show in store for you today, all sorts of breaking news to get to. But before we do that, let us introduce in studio here, joining me, right next to me, is the exquisite and delicious Cannabis Carrie. How you doing, Carrie?
Delicious?
Well, I guess. I don't know.
Some have said. Word on the street.
The word on the street.
Delicious.
Great to have you here for the show.
Thank you. I love being here for the show.
Except for our hair and makeup person. We got to get the new hair and makeup person. Anyone out there wants to do hair and makeup for the show? You don't have much to do for me, but
Hey, wait a second. Why are we starting off the show? Do I not look okay today?
no, you say you look fantastic. And of course, you've always got the hemp headlines for us at the beginning of the show. So what's in the news?
Well, today we're going to kick off the week with talking about an expo that happened on the East Coast. It's a first for them, so we're going to chat about that a little bit. Also, we're going to go to Rhode Island, where a recent study came out to talk about the adolescent marijuana use since they've had medical marijuana. And the big news that broke this weekend, a lawsuit that's happening in California. We're going to cover all of that on the Hemp Headlines today.
All right, and we will bring that to you right after this first break. And then also some great stuff on today's show. We've got Roots Monday for you today for our Daily Toker Tunes. And on Roots Monday, we're going to be talking about a song from 1945. I'm going to play this for you called Four Jumps of Jive. And we all know where the term jive comes from in the old Viper slang. So bring that to you at 20 after. Then at 30 after, we've got an interview with those aforementioned attorneys, Norml attorneys Matt Cumin and David Michael, who are filing suit in the 4 federal districts in California with constitutional arguments to end the federal crackdown on medical marijuana in the state of California. They've got some very interesting legal theories to provide in this case, including a 9th Amendment, 10th Amendment, and 14th Amendment arguments. We'll get real deep into that on today's show, talking to them at 1:30. And then at the end of the show, a little radical rant, but not so much a rant as an instructional session. I'm going to give you a look behind the scenes at the government's own website, the National Surveys of Drug Use and Health, and how you can do the research yourself to make the arguments on drug policy, drug use in America, how many people are really smoking pot, what does the government have to say about that. All the information you need is right out there, provided by your tax dollars. We're going to show you how to take advantage of that on today's Norml Show Live. So stick around. We are the voice of the marijuana nation, and all sorts of great breaking news coming up today. Also later on in the week, we've got Dr. Ethan Nadelman from Drug Policy Alliance and Captain Joe Brooks from LEAP. And remember, No Show Friday will be out of town in Atlanta, Georgia. We're right back after this.
This is Norml Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that gives us these precious rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search or seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
You're listening to Norml Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Weedmaps.com. I'm Radical Russ from Norml. In my job as outreach coordinator, I travel every month, and when I'm on the road, I need a fast, accurate way to find the medical marijuana dispensaries in the area. So I turn to Weedmaps.com. Weedmaps.com has the best dispensary locator online or on your mobile device. Search by zip code or let Weedmaps find you, and in seconds you'll have the addresses, phone numbers, and customer service reviews for the medical marijuana dispensaries in the local area. Weedmaps.com also has a section devoted to helping you find a doctor who understands and recommends medical marijuana under your state's law. You can even check prices on the Medical Marijuana Stock Exchange. Coming soon, you'll even be able to find the listings of Norml attorneys and chapters, local head shops and grow shops, and the best weed-friendly businesses. Weedmaps.com has the information you need to be an informed cannabis consumer. Visit Weedmaps.com today, a proud sponsor of the Norml Network.
Inhaling deeply of the sacred smoke.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Norml News with Cannabis Carrie.
The state of Maine held its very first medical marijuana caregivers trade show and festival this weekend. The event was held in the city-owned Augustus Civic Center on Saturday and Sunday. Police and the district attorney's office and city officials had all agreed to allow the event beforehand, including a medicational tent. The organizers of the event, called Homegrown Maine, said that it was the first time in the state where medical marijuana users were allowed to use medical marijuana somewhere other than the privacy of their own homes. There was a tent set up outside the show where anyone with the proper legal documentation was allowed to enter a tent and could use medical marijuana freely. Patients and advocates alike were able to enjoy the day and called the event a step forward for all Maine medical marijuana patients. The medicating tent was placed in full view of trade show guests and passing law enforcement through the doorless entry of the tent. The director of the Civic Center agreed that the event went smoothly considering the unusual nature. The two-day event was hosted by the Medical Marijuana Caregivers of Maine, a patient and caregiver trade organization that knew all the rules and the laws when they planned the expo. They also had experts and speakers including Dr. Lester Grinspoon, Dr. Dustin Solik, and speakers from the Maine Civil Liberties Union. The event went late on Saturday until midnight and featured live music and continued on Sunday. Organizers say this was the first event, but it will not be the last. They're already planning for another show next year.
All right. Well, Maine medical marijuana is kind of an interesting situation because, they have a fairly good law there. They allow for a great number of plants, but the problem is we don't have a whole lot of patients that are covered by that Maine medical marijuana law. They don't have a registry statistic available up online, and I believe that their registry is could be a voluntary registry at that. I don't even think they require a registry anymore. There's been a lot of changes to the Maine medical marijuana law. We encourage you to check out norml.org. Look under our medical use section, and you can find all the information you need on the relevant statutes and applications if you're in the state of Maine and want to get involved in the medical marijuana program. As far as the event goes, these medicating areas at these events are becoming fairly standard, fairly commonplace. I've been to a lot of events in California and Colorado, Oregon, and so on, where we do set up these medication areas. The worry that I have about them, though, is the perception that it might play into our opponent's hands, that we don't see these similar types of medicating areas for other sorts of symptoms or other sorts of medicines. I think it's important as reformers and advocates that we're very quick to point out that there are medication areas for every other type of medicine out there. They're called everywhere. You can take your Vicodin, you can take your OxyContin, at a restaurant, at a club, at a concert, wherever you want to go. At an expo, you're free to have your bottle of pills and take the pill when you need to. Medical marijuana being an inhaled medication makes things a little bit more difficult. So let's point out that we're not asking for any sort of special right that other people don't get with their medicine. We're just asking for the exact same rights that everybody else already has with their prescriptions.
And a study was out recently from Rhode Island that involved adolescent marijuana use. Dr. Esther Coe, the emergency room physician at Rhode Island Hospital, along with her co-authors, looked at marijuana use in teenagers since 2006, when the state opened up to legalize medical marijuana. Opponents of that measure in 2006 warned the public that to legalize medical marijuana would lead to increased marijuana use among Maine's youth. They also looked beyond their state's border for the study. The researchers compared trends in adolescent marijuana use in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, a state they said they chose because it reflected them geographically and politically. And they used the Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance System, and they did that between 1997 and 2009, those study. The analysts of the data on 32,570 students found that while marijuana use was common throughout that study period, there were no statistically significant differences in marijuana use between the states in any of those years. They found no increase of adolescent marijuana use related to the state's 2006 passage of their medical marijuana law. Dr. Chu explained her results to the American Public Health Association at their annual meeting exposition in Washington last week, that the study did not find any increase of adolescent marijuana use, but they did need additional research to track any future trends as medical marijuana in Rhode Island and other states becomes more widely used. But for now, the findings suggest that legalization of medical marijuana has no influence on teenagers' drug use.
This is something that I wanted to take a look at as well when I heard these kind of information come out. So I made a map, like I want to do. I often make maps and graphs when I want to try to understand something. And so I made this one, and I compared the 2002-2003 National Survey on Drug Use and Health Information to the 2008-2009 estimates for each state and for the 12 to 17-year-old age group. So basically it was from 2003 to 2009, how did teenage use change? Did it go up? Did it go down? And I highlighted with these little outlines the medical marijuana states that existed in 2003, so we could see if in those states was there a raise from 2003 to 2009. And then also for comparison's sake, what about the rest of the country? I mean, if the rest of the country went up or down, wouldn't that also affect the medical marijuana states? Now, in this graph that you can see, or this map that you can see on the webcam right now, all of the states that you see in some shade of blue are the states where teenage marijuana use went up between 2003 and 2009. That's right. Don't adjust your monitors. It's just 3 states: California, Colorado, and in Wyoming. And the increase in California and Colorado was less than 5%. One of them was like a 1% increase. One was about a 3% increase. Whereas Wyoming was an over 5% increase. And of course, Wyoming doesn't have medical marijuana. Meanwhile, we see a lot of the states that do have medical marijuana, like Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Alaska, and Hawaii, all out there in the West Coast that everyone thinks is such the big marijuana area of the country, all saw decreases in teen use of marijuana from 10% or less in the decrease. And then when we look in the northeastern states, Vermont had a huge decrease, like 25% decrease. Maine's decrease was over 20%. So it is a ridiculous argument to try to make that medical marijuana passage is going to have an effect on any sort of teen use of marijuana. The use of marijuana by teens owes to a lot of different factors, but medical marijuana laws are not one of them.
And we've been covering that crackdown on medical marijuana dispensaries and businesses since 4 U.S. attorneys sent threatening letters to landlords and business owners demanding that they shut their doors. Today, a lawsuit was filed simultaneously, on Friday, a lawsuit was filed simultaneously in 3 different districts in California where the U.S. attorneys have threatened criminal prosecution of both tenants and landlords and, unbelievably, newspaper publications. The lawsuit is being waged in San Francisco, the northern area, Sacramento, the eastern area, and Los Angeles, in center Central area. Additionally, Representative Brian Bilbray, a Republican from San Diego, his daughter Brianna Bilbray is listed as a plaintiff in an additional lawsuit in San Diego. She is a 25-year-old cancer survivor who is arguing on behalf of patient cooperatives that provide safe, legal access to medical cannabis. She told the LA Times today, quote, "Not only is the U.S. attorney infringing on my right as a California resident to obtain the medicine I need, but she is punishing me by making it more difficult to get the one thing I really need as a patient." She called it one of the worst feelings imaginable. Matthew Cumin, along with a few other attorneys, is filing that suit against the U.S. government and says that the people of California will fight back against this latest assault on medical marijuana. He says that this organized effort to get the fight into court will send a message to the federal government that we need to stop the aggression and sit down and talk about it reasonably. The initial complaint was filed in all four cities on Friday morning, informing the defendants, who are Attorney General Eric Holder, Drug Enforcement Administration Chief Michelle Lionheart, and the U.S. attorneys that they will seek an immediate order from a federal judge to stop the crackdown on cooperatives, property owners, and the businesses that support them. Can you tell us more, Russ?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I've got a copy of the brief itself, and it's available up at the Norml blog at blog.norml.org. I wrote this up today. You can download the PDF for yourself. And then later on today's show at 1:30, we're going to speak with Matt Cumin and David Michael, the two Norml attorneys who have filed this. And I just wanted to point out that, people sometimes go, what does Norml do? Norml's not ever done anything. I'll tell you one thing Norml's bad at, and that's tooting our own horn. But, kind of odd saying that is, toot your own horn. Well, who else is going to toot your spit-filled horn anyway? I'll toot our horn. This is what Norml does. This is what Norml attorneys do. These two attorneys, Matt Cumin and David Michael, they're being aided by Alan Silber out in New Jersey. Also, a whole lot of expert testimony in this suit in briefs filed by our own Deputy Director Paul Armentano, and all sorts of expert testimony and research provided by California Norml's Dale Geringer. This is what we do. So I encourage you to stay tuned at 1:30 for this interview where we talk to these guys, get a little more detail on it. But I'll give you the gist of it, what's going on in the suit. They're attacking on a lot of different angles. One angle here is an entrapment angle. That in 2009, in the Santa Cruz Wham suit against Eric Holder, the Department of Justice promised a federal judge it had changed its policy toward the enforcement of federal drug laws relative to California. You remember the old Ogden, the Ogden memo, the Holder pronouncement, we wouldn't go after lawful marijuana patients. Well, that got entered into court in the Santa Cruz Wham case. So what they're saying here is once that was official, once that was entered into court, California providers had a reason to believe that the federal government that what they were doing was legal. There's a couple of arguments in here, one called judicial estoppel, another one that's called equitable estoppel, and they both kind of go along the notion that if the authorities say that something is legal or is not going to be prosecuted, and you go forward in good faith with that notion, with that knowledge, and then they come back and bust you later, they can't really do that. It's the old entrapment kind of idea, if you think of old TV cop shows that don't really explain it correctly. Now, there's a few other constitutional arguments as well. One is a Ninth Amendment argument in the Constitution, and for those of you that missed the civics class, Ninth Amendment says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people, which is the old 18th century way of saying, just because the Constitution doesn't say you have a right, doesn't mean you don't have that right. I mean, really, if they were going to write down every single right that you possibly have as a person, the Constitution would be, an encyclopedia. You have the right to breathe air. You have the right to drink water. You have the right to, it would take forever, right? So that's what the Ninth Amendment's all about, is that there are rights that the people have. Just because we put rights in the Constitution doesn't mean that the people's rights necessarily go away. And so what they're trying to argue here, our Norml attorneys are arguing that threatening to seize people's property and to engage in criminal prosecutions against them violates the rights of the people to consult with their doctors about their bodies and health, something that's been approved or been recognized in other court cases as one of the rights of the people, the right to visit a doctor. There's a 10th Amendment argument in this, and of course the 10th Amendment is the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. A 10th Amendment just basically is the states' rights argument in the Constitution, and the Norml attorneys are arguing that the states have the power to regulate medicine, and since the federal government's coming down on California, but not coming down on Colorado, you're trying to assert that Colorado has some sort of states' right that California doesn't have. And that's a 10th Amendment thing that we can argue there. In the 14th Amendment argument they have here, that's equal protection under the law, that you can't be discriminated against differently from state to state. They argue that since the federal government is currently giving medical marijuana to 4 surviving investigative new drug program patients, L.V. Musica, Irv Rosenfeld, George McMahon, and the other anonymous patient, since the federal government is giving medical marijuana and producing medical marijuana for 4 federal patients, and since they're allowing Colorado to go forward with their state-run dispensary program, that it is a violation of our 14th Amendment equal protection. You cannot treat Californians differently than you treat Coloradoans, or differently than you treat Irv and Elvie and George and the other IND patients. So this is a part of their argument. We'll be talking to them more about this in our interview at 1:30, and we'll get to that right after this break. Hey, it's time to take a break, Carrie.
Excellent.
We got some reefer jazz coming up after this, 1945, so stay tuned. We're back after this.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Norml Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Alternative Medical Choices offers healthcare the way it should be. Easy to access, patient-centered, team-based, and quality-focused. We offer a variety of natural, affordable healthcare treatment options like primary care, group acupuncture, massage, and assistance with OMP registration. As a patient, you will have a team of experts working with you to make you the best you can be. Call Alternative Medical Choices at 503-288-5579 or check us out on the web at altmedchoices.com.
The children! My God! Won't somebody think of the children?
Have you considered medical marijuana? Double-blind, peer-reviewed studies have found cannabinoid therapies to be successful in treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, brain cancers, chronic pain, diabetes mellitus, dystonia, fibromyalgia, GI disorders, hepatitis C, HIV/AIDS, hypertension, incontinence, MRSA, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pruritus, rheumatoid arthritis, sleep apnea, and Tourette's syndrome, as well as anecdotal evidence suggesting relief from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, plus reduction in the need for narcotic painkillers. Side effects of medical marijuana can include euphoria, relaxation, anxiety, panic reactions, paranoia, tachycardia, dry eyes, dry mouth, concentration and reaction time impairment, appetite increase, and in 37 states, arrest and incarceration. But medical marijuana is non-toxic and cannot cause overdose. Medical marijuana. It's not for everyone, but ask your doctor if medical marijuana may be right for you.
Well, Mr. Marsh, it looks like you are in perfect health. Your blood work came back great and all your vitals appear normal. All right! Yep, you check out fine. That's great. So can I get a referral from you? For what? Medicinal marijuana. There's a shop that opened in the old KFC and they said I needed a doctor's referral to buy weed. Mr. Marsh, you don't qualify for medicinal marijuana. But you said I'm totally healthy! Medicinal marijuana is for people who aren't healthy. AIDS patients, cancer patients, people going through chemo. The THC helps them eat and take the pain. You are in fine shape. Well, that sucks.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Roots Monday, our celebration of the music that evolved into the popular modern music of today. We pick the best of blues, country, folk, and jazz with a 420 feel and serve it up for you every Monday. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Norml Show Live, send it to us at stash@norml.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
All right, before we get to today's tune, I just want to make a booking announcement. On tomorrow's show, Tuesday, we'll be speaking with Ethan Nadelman, the Executive Director of the Drug Policy Alliance. He's got a great piece, an op-ed up in the New York Times today called reefer madness and a great basic primer on what's going on in this federal crackdown and our complaints against it. And we'll have Ethan on tomorrow's show to talk more about that in depth. So check that out. We've got it up on our blog at stash.norml.org. We've also got up at the blog this next tune brought to you for your Roots Monday pleasure called 4 Jumps of Jive. That's the band. And the song is called Satchel Mouth Baby. I'm hoping that's a 1940s term of endearment. According to Bruce Eder at the All Music Guide, the 4 Jumps of Jive was a quartet formed by Willie Dixon in the late 1945 with Gene Gilmore, Bernardo Dennis, and Ellis Hunter. Their sound, a mix of R&B harmony, vocal, and blues, was getting them a serious following in Chicago, and they might have gone on to a major recording career, but the group didn't last long enough. They recorded for Mercury Records in the company's early days, including Satchel Mouth Baby and It's Just the Blues. Gilmore and Hunter left the group in 1946, and Leonard Caston, an old friend of Dixon's, came into the lineup, which was christened the Big Three Trio, making pretty much the same kind of music as the 4 Jumps of Jive for the next decade. So, band only lasted 1 year, 1945 to 1946, probably because they got the band photo. As soon as you get the band photo, somebody's got to leave. But this is the great blues band Willie Dixon with the 4 Jumps of Jive, bringing you a little Satchel Mouth Baby here for your Daily Toker Tunes Roots Monday on Norml Show Live.
Satchel Mouth Baby, we can have a lot of fun, yes, a lot of fun, because you're the cutest one. Are you so sweet? Are you so neat? When you're walking down the street, everybody says, baby, baby, you're the cutest one. Are you so heavenly? Oh, don't break for me. Oh, baby, can't you see that I'm in love? Satchel Mouth Baby, we can have a lot of fun, yes, a lot of fun, because you're the cutest one.
Copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.norml.org and choosing Media and then Toker Tunes from the main menu. Been busted? Need a lawyer? Call the Norml Legal Committee for an attorney near you. Find one at norml.org. Remember, attorneys are cheaper than a lifelong criminal drug record.
It's that freedom. I'm free to
As High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, I'm often called into the field and asked to sample or even identify exotic strains of marijuana in their natural habitat. Now, for the first time, I've compiled more than 120 of my favorite strains into this single field guide designed to fit into your pocket as you travel the world in search of your favorite plant. From a friend's closet grow room to the wilds of Northern California, this single guide covers all of today's best-known strains, plus heirlooms and throwbacks, including High Times quality photos and information on each variety's genetic heritage and growing characteristics, plus my personal notes on aroma, flavor, and potency. So this is Danny Danko, author of the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, wishing you good times and great ganja.
The official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains is available at hightimes.com and finer bookstores.
I want the people to know that they still have 2 out of 3 branches of the government working for them, and that ain't bad.
Hi, this is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of Norml. We are the oldest, largest, and best-known marijuana law reform organization in America, and it's all because of your support. Take some time to join Norml at www.norml.org. Your membership supports this podcast, our websites, our policy research and analysis, and our annual conferences. Changing marijuana laws is a grassroots effort, and it starts with you, the stakeholder. Join Norml today and add your voice to the millions of cannabis consumers who demand equality with our beer-drinking friends.
In the marijuana law reform movement, the cannabis community is represented by 2 separate yet equally important groups: the consumers, who use and cultivate cannabis, and the defense attorneys, who represent these consumers. These are their stories. It's time for Reforming Marijuana Laws with the Norml Legal Committee.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are getting our attorneys on the line, Matt Cumin and David Michael, regarding this lawsuit that's just been filed in the federal districts. And let's see if we've got them on the line. David, are you there? David, do we have you on the line? Matt?
I believe David and Matt are talking on a different line. You're calling into Cumin Summers right now trying to link in with them?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and who is this?
This is Russ Belville from the Norml podcast.
Thanks. Hold on, please.
All right. We'll get that call arranged here. We're doing it live. For those of you just joining us, the lawsuits are filed in the 4 federal districts in California regarding the recent federal government crackdown on medical marijuana. Many of the things going on here are things that are addressed in the Ethan Nadelman post that I referred to recently about the recent federal crackdown, including the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which has directed the sellers of weapons and ammunition to not sell.
Hey.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Russ. It's Matt.
Hey, Matt. Glad to have you here. Matt Cumin from Cumin Summers on the line with us, one of the attorneys from Norml that's filing this lawsuit. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Having a good time, getting the show done live here like usual. Pretty hectic day for me, and I'm sure got to be more hectic for you. Tell us about the press conference you just got back from.
Well, we had it in our office. We had probably about 60 people, members of the medical cannabis community, but a lot of mainstream media, New York Times and Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, and a lot of press, and it went very well. As we were having the press conference, we were actually literally sending notices to the U.S. Attorney Eric Holder and to the individual U.S. attorneys, notifying them that we would be filing a temporary restraining order tomorrow morning, which is what we're going to be doing, and everything's moving pretty quickly.
All right, and I think the only bad thing to say from a timing standpoint here would be the announcement of the Conrad Murray trial verdict. It's probably going to take the news headlines today, but you say you got pretty good reaction there from the news media?
Hey, Rush, you're breaking up a little bit. I can't hear you at all there.
Sorry about that. Was just trying to get David on the line as well. I think they're having some problems with that connection. I was just saying, from a news standpoint, kind of bad luck that the Conrad Murray verdict came in today. The guilty of manslaughter in the Michael Jackson case might steal a few headlines, you think?
Sure. Anything can,
Yeah. So as far as this lawsuit goes, I know that Americans for Safe Access had also filed a lawsuit. Tell us about how this may differ from previous attempts to protect Californians.
Well, ASA is a great, they do great work for patients. The big difference in the lawsuits is that we filed for immediate injunctive relief. Their complaint did not do that, and they have different agendas, and they're going to move their thing along, and they've got a plan, I'm sure. They also put a 10th Amendment claim in as the only claim. What's different with our lawsuit is we had a number of different constitutional challenges, particularly one that I think is particularly compelling and interesting, and we're hoping that the judges who look at this will feel the same way.
Yeah, we gave a brief overview of this in the news, and I'd like to get into some detail on this. The first couple of things in your request for relief here had to do with estoppel versions, judicial estoppel and equitable estoppel, and kind of this idea that the government said they weren't going to be prosecuting anyone, and so now people believed it, and they went ahead and did it. But wasn't that just a memo? Did that hold legal value, or there was something about the Santa Cruz Wham case that plays into this?
That's right. And, God, thank God, such intelligent radio interview is fantastic. The Wham case, as you may know, Russ, was brought by a group of patients against the federal government in the Northern District Federal Court. And after many years of litigation, when the Wham plaintiffs were finally allowed to proceed forward and were about to send out notices to have the government officials come into a lawyer's office and answer questions about federal drug policy and really put the pedal to the metal, the government realized what a disaster that would be. They hurriedly drafted a 3-page memorandum, now called the Ogden Memorandum. Some people call it the Holder Memorandum, but the Department of Justice calls it the Marijuana Guidance. And standing by itself, it would have been nothing more than just a kind of guidance. But what they did was they actually ran into court and said to the judge, Your Honor, we have a new policy. We're not going after these folks. And you can attach this policy to that stipulation for dismissal that we're all going to agree to, and these folks are going to get to go back and do their thing. We're not going to bother them, and we're going to go away, and we have this new policy now. And policy says we're not going to go after patients who are in compliance with state law.
Yeah, so Wham brought it to a point where they were going to be forced to come in and talk about, what's actually going on in drug policy, and they said, no, we don't want to talk about it. Besides, we're not going to go after you guys anyway. And so everybody bought that. Everybody believed, well, if they're not going to go after us, and that's where we're at now.
And so that's a judicial estoppel. But the reason that judicial estoppel is different than equitable estoppel is that in judicial estoppel, what you got is you have the court. You got the government jerking the court around.
Yeah.
You got the government, telling the judge, hey, judge, buddy, pal, it's all set. Here you go. We're going to attach this, and we're going to make all these representations. And you don't want to mess around with federal judges. You're jerking them around when you start doing stuff like that.
Well, this is a separation of powers between the executive and the judicial in this case. You can't have that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's any party. I mean, parties come into court all the time, but if they're going to take a position, the judges don't really, one of the appellate decisions we cited talked about parties playing, quote, fast and loose, end quote, with the courts. And the courts don't like that.
Right.
Now, what's different about the equitable estoppel is that they said this to the public relied on it. People actually did things or didn't do things based on that document, and now, all of a sudden, whoa, we relied on that, now you're changing direction on it.
Yeah, kind of the old, kind of like what people think of as entrapment. If the cop said do it and you did it, they can't come back later and say, oh, well, you broke the law. Well, the cop said I can do it.
Well, I can tell you for sure that if any arrests happen out here in California, and the criminal defense attorneys are going to be all over that, that notion of entrapment, because that's precisely what they call it, entrapment by estoppel, and we're very much hoping that theory will have a judge take notice. And finally, you've got the fact that in the 15 years that we've had a medical cannabis law in California, and then you add up all the other states that have the law or have pending legislation. We have 6 states with pending legislation. Plus, we have like 1 or 2 other states. One of my colleagues, David Michael, by the way, of course, the Norml legal committee lawyers have been at the forefront of this whole thing. David Michael, Alan Silver, Eric Shevin, huge support group of Lance Rogers, Art Hodge. I mean, we had 7 lawyers on the legal team for this. And, when you look at all the population of all the states and all these other states that even have resolutions about cannabis having a therapeutic effect, you're talking about 170 million people in the country living in states that have recognized cannabis, either are about to recognize it as a medical use or have recognized it or see it in some sort of therapeutic fashion. So we're now over the 50% mark.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we're thinking, the Supreme Court reversed itself in a period of 15 years on its sodomy cases. Originally it was the Hardwick case.
Right.
Back in I forget the year, but about 15 years later, they reversed itself, and part of it was they said, society's changed. The mores and values of society have changed, and we need to recognize that. So they reversed themselves, and we think, and there was also, there was a lot of interest on our part in pushing an argument that, based on the Rage case, the remand back to the Ninth Circuit after the Supreme Court ruled, where they talked about, there's going to be a time, or I think Judge Stevens said it, or Kennedy said, there's going to be a time when this is going to need to be changed. When you look at how the U.S. Supreme Court worked over the years, one of its most significant decisions when the legislature in this country refused and failed to act on racial desegregation, it was our U.S. Supreme Court that stepped in and did that. So courts can do some amazing things when there's a stalemate in society.
Yeah. We're speaking with Matt Cuman, one of the lead attorneys, along with David Michael and Alan Silber, filing these lawsuits in 4 different U.S. districts in California regarding this federal crackdown. And the next parts of the argument I find are very compelling, where you bring up the 9th, 10th, and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. And, this is interesting in that you provide that here's Colorado, a state that's going very far forward on state regulation of medical cannabis industry, and you have the federal IND program, and we've spoken to L.V. Musica and Irv Rosenfeld on the show, where you got 4 Americans getting medical cannabis, but for some reason in California it's got to be shut down. Tell our listeners how that constitutional part works.
Well, we put that under the equal protection rubric, generally the government can discriminate against us. I like to use the example of a city that decides it wants to put its factories in the part of town where the wind's blowing away from the population center. Factories may not like it, but the government, as long as they have a rational reason for putting the factories there in the residential area in the other part of town, generally they can do that. All they need is a rational basis for their decisions. They can discriminate. They can make distinctions among all of us. But there's a point at which it's not rational to give out cannabis with your left hand and then forbid it with your right hand. And that's part of the equal protection problem. What's rational about that? What's rational about, and God knows we don't want to do anything to hurt the Colorado experiment. We just want to be treated just like Colorado. But what's rational about treating the state of Colorado one way and treating us a different way?
Yeah.
Or treating the patients, we should say. Why, and then, of course, or why take a policy that says, well, we're okay with individuals using cannabis as long as their doctors recommend it, but we really don't want them to have a supply of cannabis.
Yeah, as long as they can't get it from anyone.
So it doesn't really make any sense, and so these go to the equal protection arguments that we were making and that we will be making throughout the course of this litigation.
All right. Now, on the 9th Amendment and 10th Amendment side of this, you've got an argument about how these threatened crackdowns on landlords and dispensaries and advertisers are getting in between a a person's right to visit their doctor and learn about medical marijuana, and that. Give us a little more detail on how that argument goes.
Well, these are fundamental liberty interests. What could be more personal and private and a cornerstone of who we are than to be able to have a relationship with our doctor and to make healthcare decisions about ourselves. And then we've got a government that's basically getting in the way of that. And that interjection or that interceding in between us and the doctors, and then cutting off the supply of the medicine the doctors are saying is good for us. I mean, this is a fundamental problem that the government is intruding on the right of these states to make those fundamental. The states are really the ones in charge of regulating issues around health and so forth. And California clearly has decided that medical cannabis is something that should be encouraged as something that's good for the health of the population. So the Ninth Amendment argument really is important because it shows that the federal government has overstepped.
Yeah. Now, the trump card the government holds in all of these arguments is the Raich v. Gonzalez case, where they said,
well, not really, Russ. I mean, the trump card is that federal law says that cannabis has Schedule I has no accepted medical or scientific value, and this is the trump card.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to say is they're going to bring it forth and say, well, Raich already decided that the Commerce Clause says that we can do this because marijuana is fungible, and Wickard arguments about wheat and all that kind of stuff. How does this get around that? How do we get Raich overturned?
So I think the guidance, or what they called marijuana guidance that I referred to earlier, I think things have changed since the Raich decision came out in 2005. The world is different now, 6 years later. The way the world was different when the court revisited the sodomy law case. We've got many more states that have passed medical cannabis laws. We have many more people in those states now that are supporting medical cannabis. So that really, even though the commerce that the Raich case said that the United States government's Controlled Substances Act was not overreaching when it reached inside of California to regulate our internal or intrastate medical cannabis market. Now that intersects, or now that's going to come in conflict with the government's own position that they're not going to enforce the laws against patients who are complying with state law. We now have a new kind of juxtaposition of positions.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to reporting on this as it goes through the various twists and turns of the legal system. What is the next step in this, Matt Cumin?
Following, as soon as I hang up with you, I'm going to try to get the rest of my documents ready for filing tomorrow. We've been just busy little beavers out here in San Francisco and the rest of the state with all my co-counsel. Alan Silver, too, in New Jersey, has been a critical part of our lead team, and we've all been trying to get these done. So we have to get the papers done today, and then tomorrow morning we will electronically file for a temporary restraining order, wait to hear from the court and see whether they want to have us come in for the TRO hearing, or just have to see how we're going to proceed.
Well, it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to these new strategies being employed to try to protect California medical marijuana in general, and even more generally, just the rights of Americans. So thank you so much for doing this work. It needs to be done.
Russ, it's great to talk to you, and I hope to see you down in Key West in a few weeks.
I will be there in Key West. We will talk more about this here at that point.
Okay, Russ.
Thank you, Matt Cumin from Cumin Summers, part of the Norml Legal Committee, working hard to protect your rights and to force this federal government to reverse its ridiculous decisions in Raich v. Gonzalez and realize that the Controlled Substance Act was never intended to change the way we do medicine in this country. Medicine is a purview of the states. It's time to recognize the states' 10th Amendment rights to do so. When we come back, a little time for radical rant, not exactly, more radical instruction. We'll be right back with some national survey on drug use and health information for you.
Want more than just your Norml show live? Get your daily fix of marijuana news and interviews on the Norml Daily Audio Stash, the weekday podcast available on iTunes and at stash.norml.org.
John Papa. You're listening to the Norml Show Live.
Hear the Hollywood Hemptress Hour with Terry Joyce every Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific with replays at 2 a.m. Also catch the morning replays every Tuesday at 8 a.m. and the weekend replay Saturday at 5 a.m. right here on the Norml Network. Marijuana and alcohol are the two most popular recreational drugs in America. Marijuana smoking is non-toxic, relatively safe, and has a low risk of dependence. Alcohol drinking is potentially fatal, dangerous to society, and is quite addictive. Marijuana is safer, so why are we driving people to drink? That's the question of the new book, Marijuana is Safer, So Why Are We Driving People to Drink? By Paul Armentano, Mason Tvert, and Steve Fox. Visit Amazon.com or ChelseaGreen.com today to order your copy of Marijuana is Safer, or visit MarijuanaIsSafer.com.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
All right, welcome back, everybody. You know, I've been thinking about what I should rant about this week and in general lately, and sometimes I look at the list of things I've ranted about and realize that, gee, I've talked about these really detailed topics of a lot of complex issues in them, like we were just talking about judicial estoppel and all this stuff. And I realized that, you know, there might be new people coming on to this show, joining up here that have no idea what I'm talking about. And some of these things that we take for granted as drug policy reformers ought to be given a little bit more instructional time. And so today, I'm going to take a look at one of the best sources you can find as a drug policy reformer online to get the government's own information on the use of marijuana and other drugs in the United States. It all comes from the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, otherwise known as SAMHSA, S-A-M-H-S-A. If you're taking notes, you'll want to write that down, S-A-M-H-S-A. That's the main group, and they maintain something known as SAMHDA, S-A-M-HDA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Data Archive. And this is a place where, if you've seen all of the numerous charts and information that I bring up, this is where it all comes from, is a lot of these charts. And another place that would be very important for you to know about is the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. And this sometimes is known as NSDUH, NSDUH, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. And as you can see, this goes back to 1994 on some of these, and you can get all sorts of information on National Survey on Drug Use and Health. This is done every year since the 70s. We can get data on this stuff, and it asks people in general about their use of different substances. Let me take you to the first National Survey link here, the latest National Survey on Drug Use and Health link, which will take you to their main page. Take us to an error page. Isn't that nice, right, when I'm doing this live? Okay, so the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, and all sorts of information, trends in adolescent inhalant use, the need for alcohol treatment, marijuana use, and perceived risk of use amongst adolescents. And you can pick something like that, and looks like they're doing something out there with the website, because a lot of dead links. Let's go back to SAMHDA instead. Maybe we'll find something to talk about. The Substance Abuse Mental Health Data Archive, SAMHDA. And as you get to this website, which it's got a really difficult web address. I don't want to read it out to you because it's long and it's got a lot of slashes and stuff. But just go to Google and look up SAMHDA, and you should be able to find this. And what's interesting about it is along the left-hand side, there's a navigation area here. And one of the navigation items will say analyzing data online, and another one will say quick tables. Now, if you just want a quick answer to some information, quick tables is the easiest one to use. So I'll take you there to quick tables. And once you get to quick tables, there'll be a set of drop-downs here where you have 4 different sets of data that you can look at. You can look at health behavior in school-aged children, right? This is the information on the kids. National Survey on Drug Use and Health, that would be, age 12 and up, use of various substances. The treatment episode data set admissions and treatment episode data set discharges, that's rehab. This is like the statistics of how many people go into rehab. So, when I've told you that 37% of the people who go to rehab for marijuana haven't used pot in the previous month, that's where that comes from. So if we start with National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which is the one you'll probably use the most because it's your basic, how many people smoke pot? How many people smoke pot this month? At what age do people start smoking pot? Those kind of questions can be answered here. So when you drop it down, you will see the surveys going back all the way to 2001 online. And you can compare either the entire sample, which would be age 12 and up, or you can go to 12 to 17-year-olds, just the children. Let's go with the entire sample from the 2009 National Survey on Drug Use and Health. This will take you to a series of choices of which tables you would like to look up. Cigarettes, alcohol, cocaine, crack, hallucinogens, heroin, inhalants. There's marijuana. So you can click on marijuana use, and from there we will have more options to set up. For example, measures of marijuana use. How many people have ever used marijuana? And then, if you open that up, you'll have other choices like the age when they first used marijuana, how recently have they used marijuana, number of days they've used marijuana in the past 12 months. Respondent characteristics will give you gender, but other choices. This is how you would break the data down, male or female. But there's also marital status, educational attainment, age group, race, ethnicity, so on. Let's stick with gender for now. The confidence intervals, unless you're doing a major statistical paper, you really don't have to worry about this one very much. Confidence intervals is, statistically speaking, how accurate is the data. Don't worry about that for just general use. And then you have all sorts of options in here about how you can chart the data if you want to display a chart. I'm going to say no chart for now, but there's options there, 2D, 3D, what size, and so forth. So again, the question we're asking here on SAMHDA, S-A-M-H-D-A, how many people have ever used marijuana by gender? And when you create the table, the federal government will tell you that 46.5% of males have smoked marijuana or used marijuana. 37.2% of females have tried marijuana. So this is where I talk about that 10-point gap or close to 10-point gap here between men and women's use of marijuana. There it is. And then that gives you 41.7% of the U.S. population who has ever used marijuana in their lifetime. Now, if you want to know how many people that is, that's where these numbers at the bottom help you out. Unweighted N is what they'll call this bottom line, and N is just a stats thing that means number of cases. So what they're telling you here is that they asked 26,000 men and they asked 29,000 women. And so total, they talked to 55,000 people to get these statistics. Weighted N, the next line up, tells you if we extrapolate those number of people to the total number of people in the United States, you would have 122 million men, 129 million women, for a total of 251 million Americans. Now remember, this is age 12 and up, so there's more than that if you count kids. But from age 12 and up, there are 251 million Americans. So if you wanted to know exactly how many people have smoked marijuana, all you got to do is take 41.7% times that 251 million, and you can say how many people, about 106 million it turns out to be, how many people have smoked marijuana in their lifetime. And these kind of numbers are invaluable when you're having an argument with a drug warrior, when whenever you're trying to do this from our side, there's a lot of doubt about our accuracy. Well, you can say this is the government's own numbers, man. You can't doubt it. This is the government's own numbers. The other link that's available here next to Quick Tables Analyzing Data Online is much more detailed. It gives you all of these other studies, substance abuse treatment services, alcohol and drug services studies, California data, gambling impacts. I mean, just more stuff than you can shake a stick at. And even if you do just pick, say, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health and analyze 2009, the the level of data you're going to get through analyzing data online is incredible. Every single variable that they have in this database is available for us to be able to access and be able to come up with information about. This is how I was able to extract, for example, how many 18 and up have smoked marijuana, because from here you can get to the identification variables, you can get to the exact core substance use, the exact age and demographics of the people. I encourage you, check out SAMHDA.
This is Norml Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.
All right, for Cannabis Carry, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. That's it for the podcast. Join us for Toker Talk Radio in hour 2. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
You dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.